A lot of economic news happened this week, not the least to say that there's a little bit of action over at the Federal Reserve. And major news happening for the economy. Federal Reserve released a statement. They've changed that definition. They're no longer using the word transitory, which I think it's kind of the emperor had no clothes.
Yeah.
Inflation, no, it wasn't transitory. We're talking about inflation, throughout the end of 2021. Obviously, there's only a couple weeks, but through 2022, and we've seen between the producer price index (PPE) as well as CPI, the consumer price index, all spiking, all at decade highs, multi-decade highs. So there's really no argument anymore. Matt, I don't think this is too surprising. How's this going to affect the multifamily industry, if at all?
Well, and if he's raising rates, it's not so great for people that are looking for a loan. I kind of think the way the stock market reacted was almost like they're glad the uncertainty's gone.
Yep.
And it didn't, because it obviously didn't crash upon hearing the news. So it's kind of like they're probably expecting that. And people are asking about ways to address inflation. So it was hard to imagine that they weren't going to do anything. I think he's always walking a tightrope between the doves and the hawks, and they're.
Well, I think the bond market, bond rate, interest rates went down. So yeah. It's just because we'll just look real quick. Yeah, bond rates have gone down since the announcement. So even though that the Fed announced that there would be approximately 3 interest rate hikes in 2022, what the actual bond market, which people say is the smarter markets where the smart money is, who knows? And it's also pretty well manipulated from the Federal Reserve. It took a nice dip. Now it's certainly elevated from September when it was really dipping down. Well, that was 2020. But we're lower than it had been. And again, this is the question that we've asked ourselves multiple times: is what's a higher probability? Interest rates, the 10-year being at 5%, or more, mortgage rates, but call the 10-year being at 5% over the next couple of years, call it 5 years, or negative 10 year. In the next 5 years, what's more likely?
Well, I don't know. 5%. It is not. I think a lot of this is there's never been in our lifetimes the need for interest rates that high.
I mean, at 5%?
Yeah.
I mean, I think they were getting up there in 2018 or so, and in the 90s, I think they were. We can go back to 1962. Let's. So, I mean, what is true 100% is this aberration during the 1970s and really in the early 80s of a spike of interest rates. And, you're right, Matt. Interest, the 10-year, hasn't gotten to hit 5% since 2006 or so. And it's been on a steady decline since. The question, on top of are we going to see 5% or are we going to see negative rates? It's twofold. One, look at this trend line. The second is if 7% CPI does not move interest rates, if that does not move the 30-year bond, if that does not move the 10-year bond significantly, what will?
Yeah.
What is going to move it? There's so much debt that's been created that needs to be inflated away. Mm-hmm. They want to get to full unemployment. And the only solution is going to be negative rates at some point, because if there is a crisis that happens, there's only one way to go, and it's lower. So I think that we will see moderately higher rates over the next year or so, but I think if I had to predict over the next decade or so, we're going to see continued lower rates, and I think we're going to see negative rates. It's only a matter of time.
I do remember some discussions of this from other news sources about Jay Powell in 2018 kind of being chastened away from higher rates, and almost like he's much more circumspect now. But I think that I just want to return. It's like a lot of people have not lived through a significant inflationary environment, and I think it's going to be interesting because it's a little bit harder to predict because I don't when was the last time CPI was this high? Is my question.
That's a good. We could look it up real quick. But it's been a while since it's. I mean, it's decades. It's definitely decades, and it probably has to go back to that early '80s time period.